Oh, yeah. I saw the comment in the comment section. We do record all of the sessions, and I will share a recording with everyone, and then I will also upload some of these somewhere central where we can kind of host them. For now, I've just started like a YouTube channel, but when I send a follow-up mail to everyone, I will include all of the materials that I'm going to share. And also you'll see in the deck, there'll be some links that you can use as well. But I'll go through that in detail when we get started. I think we've given everyone enough time to join. Anybody who joins in late can always kind of catch up on the beginning of the webinar. So it's only a few minutes anyway, so they should be fine. Hi, everyone. Again, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate you all coming through and joining the second webinar. For those who missed the first one, I did send a follow-up email to everyone. And I did make sure that I've included all of the links. I've included the PDF of the PowerPoint presentation that I took everyone through. I also have the recording, like I said, on YouTube. So if you missed that, you can always go back and have a look. I am going to be creating some short bite-sized content for this as we go through the different webinars, just to make it easier for anyone who prefers that, as opposed to going through the entire session. I mean, there's different ways to learn. And I think, again, with information overload on the different digital platforms, I think that's just the best way to do it. So I will make sure that all of that stuff is shared, and I will communicate with everyone once all the different channels are up and they're able to follow, subscribe, whatever. As you can see, kind of freestyling this, the idea was just to get everyone in a room and see what everybody needs and try to help where I can. And the rest of it, putting everything in place, the admin and all of that, I am going to work on it, but I will try and share as much of the information as I can on mail as well. I am going to, you'll see when you signed up, there was like an opt-in thing. I am working on creating a newsletter. I have one already on LinkedIn called Intimately. If you haven't subscribed yet, you can go to my profile. I'll also link it in the mails that will follow. You can subscribe. I do write a bit more longer form content on there, but I will also move that off of LinkedIn. I think I need somewhere where I can actually have control in terms of how it looks, how it engages, make sure I'm sharing the right stuff, videos, and all that kind of content. I will also have some of the more important highlights and takeouts from the different webinars, and I'll include that in the newsletter as well. So that should be an exciting one. I am, as mentioned, if you went here in the last one, I am also looking at including other people in the webinar. So I'll bring, some people who are experts in their field who can actually take us through some of the stuff that's involved in digital media, but I will try and cover the stuff that I know personally that I've worked with. And I'll start with that while I'm organizing all the different speakers and people who can come and weigh in. I have made accommodation for a few minutes at the end of the session to take some questions and some comments. Anyone who wants to stay and have a 5 to 10 minute chat around something specific that's either outside of what we're going to cover today, or even if it's related and you just have more questions to ask, I am going to give you some time at the end of this so we can chat. I did get a lot of questions and some requests after the last one, so that's why I'm doing that. I think it's just going to be useful for everyone to have an idea of, how the entire, well, let's call it the entire digital course is going to go. And also, so you're clear in terms of whatever you're interested in, that's what you will then need to sign up for, and make sure that you are not attending every single one of these sessions. They are broken up into the different avenues of digital marketing, from creative media, digital, and so forth. So you will get the different, webinars to register for. Just pick the ones that are relevant to you. If you have a specific thing in mind that you want to actually look at, but if you want to just get a view of everything, again, that's also an option for you. I do understand that there are some people who are already within the digital industry and are just looking to move from one position to the other. Then might be something that needs to be more of a one-on-one conversation, and I'm happy to have those conversations with you. So please, by all means, you can send me a comment in one of the webinars, or you can send me a message on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to make time for you where I can. So let's get started with today's webinar. We are looking at content marketing for today, and I will try and go into as much detail as I can, which isn't a lot, but I think what I've done is made sure that the presentation covers quite a bit of what you need to know. And I've also approached it from a point of, people who understand what it is, people who don't understand what it is, and who are new to digital, and those who've been in the industry for a little bit. What I do love about digital is that a lot of the times when we look at what people the work that we do on a day-to-day, some people aren't actually aware of what kind of opportunities exist, or that a specific thing is actually even a career, right? So that's something that I really love about digital as well. So you'll see as we go through some of the stuff, it's stuff that we see on a day-to-day basis, stuff that we work with, and stuff that you might see as a consumer or a digital user, but not necessarily look at it and see it as something that you could build a career from. And I think that was the whole point of doing these webinars, is to get people into a mindset shift, and also just to show what kind of opportunities exist and are available for you. I've launched a couple of polls in the comment section, so if you could please engage with that. Some of those is just to understand if the webinars are going in the right direction, how I need to tweak my content, and also just to understand where you are in terms of your understanding, and it will just help me structure the entire course better. I think, like I said, it is a work in progress, which I am enjoying. So thank you again for joining. I'm going to share my screen quick. And I am hoping then that you'll hope you did not see my calendar, because it will give you heart palpitations. Cool. So we're covering content marketing. I did touch briefly on it in the introduction course, where I kind of touched on what it entails, right? Obviously, it's, again, the big thing with this one is just being able to create content that's engaging, that adds value to your audience, or to whoever's consuming it or reading it or listening to it. And now it's different ways that you can do it, and it's not only relevant to brands. And I actually want us to start looking at it in that way, that it's not just relevant to brands alone, but it's also something that's really relevant to you as an individual. And I think the best way to learn, and the best way to actually teach yourself to do some of these things, is to actually start doing it on a personal level, and then you'll then find opportunities within the different businesses. If you go to the first webinar, I did take through everyone in terms of what skill stacking, how it benefited me, and working in different industries, from publishing to a radio station to creative agency, digital, and now in media. So all of that stuff does come together, but again, it does also work based on how you position yourself and how you actually communicate, or how you put that in your CV. There is there will be a webinar where I talk about that specifically, just in terms of how to position the experience you have, and how it can be relevant in places that you didn't think it could actually be relevant in. And I'll talk you through just some of the jobs that I've managed to land without my CV being mentioned at all in an interview. So that would be an interesting story to take you through as well. And then just in terms of what content marketing is, obviously there's different versions of it, and you can actually go into a very deep dark hole of the internet trying to just to teach yourself. What I've tried to do is, one, use the context I have of the industry and the work that I've done, and also try and bring that in terms of how it's worked for the brands I've worked for, but also how it's worked for myself. And you'll see how some of it, including this webinar, is actually content marketing for myself and for my personal brand and for my career. So again, this really what it is, and I remember someone in the previous webinar asked if I'll be talking about strategy throughout the webinars, because again, it felt like it was kind of focused on specific, fields and aspects of digital. But really, like I said, everything will be from a strategic lens, because that's what I've been for the last couple of years, a strategist. But again, I still have that background of how performance marketing works, community management, social media management, and all of that. But really, content marketing, if you think about it in the lens of, it's just about creating content that when you share it for the audience that you've defined, which is a big part of this, you'll see as well, is that it needs to be valuable, it needs to be relevant, and it needs to be content that you are actually consistently creating. And really, it's just to get your audience to, one, get them to whatever platform that you'll be using, which I'll take you through, but also to keep them there and to keep them engaged. It's not just about the job of getting them there, it's about the job of keeping them there as well. If you think about all the different digital platforms, and it's the same for brands and for individuals. If you're looking looking at it from a social media, from a website, from a blog, from the video platforms. I mean, YouTube is a social platform, but if you look at all these different platforms, a lot of their algorithms are around how are you adding value to the people who are watching your content? Are people watching your content long enough and engaging with it? And that's how they kind of tell that it's relevant and they need to share it with more people. But the bigger one is, are you consistent with that content? Because none of these platforms want to send people to your page and you're posting once every 3 months and then 4 times a month and then once every 3 months. That consistency is key because their biggest priority, it doesn't matter what you do and how they can push your content. Obviously, their own priority is to get as many people as they can to their platforms, to keep them there for as long as they can. And that's why it's really important to get people to your platform, to keep them there, because every platform just wants to see how much longer can we keep this person on our platform, because that means they can sell more ad space. They can, they can boast to all advertising agencies about how long people spend on their platform. So you always have to keep that in mind. But again, it's also around, if you've got a short content piece, are people getting to the end of it? Because then it shows that they're enjoying it. It shows that it's adding value to them. And we're talking about content, video content, written content, your website content that you have for those who are lucky enough to have a website. But that's a big one. But the ultimate goal is that you need to be adding value to whoever is reading, watching, listening to your content. Obviously, unlike traditional, but again, it's also just understanding your audience. And that's a big one. You need to know what their needs are, what their interests of your audiences are. It's difficult to get into a niche for a lot of people. I myself also struggle with that a lot, but it's very key to find a niche and stick to that, because then you can consistently be relevant to anyone who comes to your platforms, because they'll get the same content that's related to a specific niche and to a specific topic. And that's really key. It's a long-term play. So I want you to get that already in your mind. And this is where I think a lot of brands fail, is that we often approach brand work from a campaign perspective, 2 months, 3 months, 1 month, and that kind of thing. And usually that means that we don't have a lot of time for the content we're doing to gain traction. We don't have a lot of time for people to actually understand what the brand is about. And a lot of the times the campaign messaging, or what you would call the 3 months period, whatever the brand messaging will be, will kind of overshadow what the brand's positioning is, because that positioning needs a long time to actually land and for people to recognize what it is. So if I say a brand name, you associate it with a specific positioning, but brands tend to get into this brand, campaign messaging rhythm, and that usually can take away from what the brand positioning is. Maybe a hugely successful campaign that lasts 3 months is now what people remember about your brand, but that is not your brand positioning. So this is a very long-term play, and it's the same for brands, and it's the same for you as an individual. I touched on it in the first one in terms of what you need and what you will gain from actually creating content, or engaging with content marketing. It's not difficult. But it does take a lot of time and a lot of research, and you actually need to invest a bit of time in that, because you don't just connect with people. You need to understand them. You need to understand what content they are also, finding relevant to themselves. There's a few skills that you'll need. There's also the same skills that I've listed here, the same ones that you will actually get to improve on, and you can actually get to build as you go on this journey. You need to be able to write, and write well. You need to be able to be a storyteller. You need to understand what kind of words to use, keywords that people can find you, because that's a big thing about content marketing. Your content needs to be discoverable. People need to be able to find it. If I'm interested in buying a pair of shoes and I'm searching the latest, sneaker drops, you need to, if that's your focus and that's your content, you need to have those keywords in your content, so that when I search for it, your content then comes up. However, the question with that one is, don't just go for what you think is the most popular keywords and you're just going to put them all over your content. What's going to happen is each of these platforms is going to penalize you, because you are driving me, who's looking for a sneaker, to a content piece using that keyword. But when I get to it, there's nothing about the latest sneaker drops. And when I leave your content piece immediately, those bounce rates will actually come back and hurt you. So it's important not to be clickbaity. And then obviously I also touched on what is the best place, where is the best place to start for you if you're kind of looking at yourself and you want to transition into the space. If you start blogging, if you start, picking up some freelance writing, jobs. You can look at internships, as well as there are some online courses. I've included links, as always, in the later slides of the presentation, where you can actually click through and you can get to some websites that go into this stuff in even more detail. It's some of the trusted ones, some of the industry leaders. So you'll get some of those links at the bottom of the slides as well. Then, just in terms of, who needs to understand content marketing, I want to kind of move away from it's just for brands. It's not. Yes, brands need to understand content marketing, but influencers also need to understand content marketing. Freelancers need to understand it, as well as professionals who are working within the industry, the industry, who are working for specific brand and companies, because this stuff can come in, like I said, really, really handy. It's easy for you to transition, copywriting, social media management, strategy. And again, it's about that's a skill stacking that I talked about, which was in the first webinar. But again, I just want to make sure that we're clear that it's not just for brands or people who work on brands. As an influencer, as a freelancer, as an individual, this is something that can also come in really, really handy for you. You'll see as we go. Now, why you need it is also another key one, right? You need to be able to establish your brand, which was what I mentioned a few slides ago. You need to be able to establish your brand, and it needs to be clear to the audience. And that's why it's so key, not only to define your audience, but also to define what your brand, message, your brand positioning is, what your brand tone is, what your brand really go deep in terms of, if you're writing this for a specific brand, even before I know, which brand is serving me that content, just by their tone, just by how they frame and how they structure content, I already know what it is. So those are some of the key aspects of content marketing. And you'll see some of it is stuff that you necessarily even think about as being content marketing. And that's a big one. It's easier to track performance, because as you're creating the content, if you're doing it right and you've gotten the bases of creating content, and you're clear on which platform it needs to be on, you're clear on what you want to see on each platform, it'll be easy for you to track, because then you'll have different goals for each of the platforms. Are you trying to get people to watch your videos? Are you trying to get people to give you their email addresses? Are you trying to get people to engage and share with their own followers? Then you will track that specific thing that you want to get out of your content, and that will become important when you talk when I get to what KPIs to track and how you can actually see if you're doing it right and if it's working for you or not. And then obviously you want to generate leads and you want to attract a relevant audience. It's up to you if you want to generate leads and build an audience. I think in the last couple of years, well, a lot of brands have picked it up in the last couple of years, but for a long time, data has become a key aspect of the business. If you have contacts and you can personalize communication, it's really key. There's companies who solely have built their businesses on selling other brands data, and being able to actually just use the data they have. There's so many brands who are sitting on data that are not doing anything with it. And when you start doing content marketing, you can also add that as part of what you want to do and what you want to achieve. It will help you build trust with your audience, especially if you are working on a personal brand, you're working as an influencer, you're working as a professional even. And this is something that I also want to highlight, and this is why I was saying content marketing is actually relevant to us who work within the industry. When I say it helps build trust with your audience, when I look at, for instance, the content I create for LinkedIn, the content I create for my let's call it a newsletter or even my blog, I know exactly who's going to read that content. Some of it is going to be people from my industry. Some of it is going to be people who work with brands. Some of it is going to be people who can potentially hire me for positions. And I'm always cognizant of what I'm saying and how it paints me and how I come off in those content pieces. And a lot of the people who follow me on my LinkedIn are people that I actually work for on a day-to-day. And if I say a dumb thing on there, it will always come back and bite me in the ass. So it's always key that I make sure what I share and the content I create, it helps build that trust. And it goes to a point where, a perfect example for this one, just a quick segue, is that I started the newsletter, which is intimately on LinkedIn, and had just started working on the brand that I work on currently. And within a week, I then had a meeting with the brand teams of some of the brands I work on. And in that meeting, the brand manager congratulated me on starting the newsletter and recommended it to everyone else who was on the call. And they sent an email and they shared it with everyone. And immediately, in terms of what I had to say and what they, how much they listened to what I had to say, I could immediately feel and see that shift. And that was mainly because of something I was doing on LinkedIn, which you consider as a personal platform that has nothing to do necessarily with the job I do on a day-to-day, my career, yes. But it's those things that help build your personal brand, and you can get as far as people within the HR space or the recruitment space saying, I haven't seen your CV, but I really like the content you have, and I think this opportunity would be great for you. And that's where I said it's relevant even if you're working as an individual or just a professional within a specific space. You can then obviously take advantage of social shares. Where that one comes in is that you will create content for the 5 people you have who subscribe to your newsletter, for instance. But if they find it valuable enough that they feel like they really want to share this with other people, you then get exposed to their audience because they'll take that step and share it and get to more people to come back and subscribe, and also now start engaging with the newsletter or your blog or your YouTube channel or whatever the case is. So that's why it's also really important to be relevant and make sure your content really adds value enough for people to want to share it. And then in terms of, okay, I guess the PowerPoint is broken, but we'll fix it. In terms of some of the key components that you need, right? So some of the essential ones to get your content marketing right, I already kind of touched on some of these. You need to understand your audience for one. You need to be clear on what you're trying to sell. Are you selling yourself as a personal brand? Are you selling a specific product? Are you selling a specific service? Who would be the perfect person to speak to about that, and how, what is the problem that you'd be solving for them? Always approach it with that mindset, and then you at least be in a good starting place. But then you also need to understand these people you want to talk to, where are they on the internet? Where are they engaging with the most? They might be on all 7 digital platforms that you can find, but which one are they on just to consume content, and which one are they on to actually engage and talk to you, and which one are they on just to scroll the whole day and really not really engage? So you need to understand all of that, and you can create different content based on what actions they're taking and why they use specific platforms. You need to have goals for your content. I did speak about this again a few slides before. Are you trying to get people to give you contact information? Are you trying to get them to subscribe? Are you trying to get them to go buy your product in store? Are you trying to get them to offer you a job, whatever the plan is? If you are a freelancer, a professional, or maybe even an influencer, then you need to decide on the type of content. That one is key, because you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you are like, cool, I'll do webinars for people who need it, and you build that and you can only manage 3, and then after that you can't continue anymore, and it falls a little too much like work, or maybe it's just not exciting enough anymore. You need to know what you're getting yourself into. You need to pick the type of content that you're comfortable creating, and you can create on a constant basis, and then that's what you need to really focus on. The biggest one for me, and I think this is something you'll see when you go online and look at content creation, even content marketing, is that you need to find the thing that you live every day. Or if you're trying to sell a service or a product, find a way to bring it to your, or to your own interest as well, so that when you're actually communicating, whether it's video, podcast, or you're writing it, your energy and your passion and your love for it comes through, because then the person who's reading it or watching it will also feel that energy, and that also helps you connect a lot better. Like I said, big one is defining what your narrative is with your brand. Now, this is a bit of a balancing act. So you need to understand what you want to say and how you want to position your brand, what you want your brand to be about. But you also need to marry that with what your audience is expecting from your brand, because a lot of brands, what they do, and this is something that we struggle with a lot in the industry, is that every brand is ready to speak and shout and scream about what they're selling, what their product is, and how good it is. And we forget to often listen to the audience and be like, is audience really interested in this? Are our customers really interested in this stuff? You will see this with a lot of brands, where they share ingredients, they share how healthy they are, they talk about how the product was made and all of those things. And you find that the audience really just wants to know, where can I find it, how much is it, and those kind of things. You need to understand exactly what the audience is interested in before you start just focusing on your brand speaking, and not necessarily listening to what your audience is saying. And this is important. It doesn't matter if you have 5 people who follow your brand, or your whatever your content that you're creating, or if you have 1,000. That rules applies across. So that's something to keep in mind. And then in terms of setting yourself up for success, right? These are key, but obviously you can break it up and you can do one pair, or you can, if you have the time, you can look at kind of figuring all out. But my thing is, it'd be a good idea to have a look at across the board before you get started, before you even invest time in this, right? So like I said, in terms of content, what type of content do you need, do you want to create, and when will this content go out? How often will it go out? On which platforms? And how often on each platform? You need to go down to those, the granular details of that. Then also your audience research, which actually should have come before all of these on the page. You need to understand what I mentioned earlier. What are their needs? What do they prefer? What does their media usage look like? And what I've found as well is that what happens with a lot of brands is they'll find that TikTok is blowing up. Everyone is on TikTok. Like, cool, we got to be on TikTok. But you find that their audience actually isn't necessarily on TikTok, and it's on Meta, or maybe it's on YouTube. But it's also as granular as understanding that on TikTok, my audience is there to be entertained, and my audience is on YouTube to find something to buy. And it's you need to know what those details are, so that on each platform you're showing up based on how your audience wants to see you on those platforms. And sometimes you find that your audience actually wants to go to TikTok and shop. TikTok maybe buy it is a big thing, and if your brand falls within that category, those are things that you also need to actually keep in mind. Then there's a kind of a both technical and creative side, which is SEO optimization. You need to understand which keywords you need to use. You need to understand where to use them, and understanding the technical side of it. So this is for people who have a website or a blog, and even on LinkedIn. I mentioned in the first webinar, I think if I didn't, I'll mention it now. There are some platforms that Google prefers as SEO preferred social platforms. LinkedIn is one of them. So if you use your post on LinkedIn, use the right keywords as part of your content marketing, you will be more discoverable on Google because of that. But also on YouTube now, or Google is able to actually index a video. And if I search, how do I do this, or I'm looking for a specific thing, it will tell me in the search results, at 4 minutes of this video, they talk about what you're searching for. So all of those things is important. That goes down to creating, and I'll go into detail around content creation, but that's a whole different conversation. But it goes down to creating, when you create your content, the description has to be detailed. The metadata of anything you're posting also needs to be, considered. And that's, again, your SEO. When we talk about search engine optimization, that's a big one. And people all often look at this as like a technical, but it's really just understanding the right words to use, and when to use them, where to use them. One keyword that's super popular on LinkedIn won't be the same one that's super popular on YouTube, or that's super popular on a different platform like Threads, for instance. Then in terms of the content, you also need to know which content makes, which format makes sense, not only for your business, but for your audience, depending on where they are, and which platform does it make sense for, right? And then you also need to look at how do you create that content, how do you deliver it. And like I said, consistency is key. So you want to get into a rhythm that you can maintain. You don't want to start, really tiring yourself out, and you start to feel like this is now exhausting you. There is specific tricks that you can use where you turn one content into multiple content pieces formatted for different platforms. And that's something that really will have you creating a lot of content in a very short space of time. A lot of these big marketing guys talk about this. I think Gary Vee is the biggest one, where he talks about posting 10 times on each platform every day. But it's not 10 unique content pieces. It's writing a blog post that's about 1,000 words, turning it into 7 different quotes to share, and turning those into short form video content, as well as turning it into memes. If you're good at creating memes, there's a different ways of really packaging and delivering that content. And this is stuff that brands need to also start incorporating into their content, because if I'm on a platform that communicate, where memes are a big thing, that's the only way I'm going to listen to your brand, and how I'm going to engage with your brand, if you are serving me memes on that platform as well. So you need to use it, you need to use each platform for what it's meant for. Again, takes me back to that. But like I said, understanding how you're going to create and deliver that content on each of the platform. And that also speaks in terms of, is it a video podcast? Is it a infographic, which used to be big on LinkedIn at some point? And then just in terms of where you show up, right? So you've got different ways that you can show up. You can show up on these are terms that, um, jargon or technical terms that we use in the industry, owned media, and media and paid media. A lot of us on who are actually getting started, even people who've been in the industry for a long time, the paid media side who might not have the budgets for, but it doesn't mean that we really can't, really work on our content marketing game, and also just make sure that we're showing up in the ways that we need to. So channels that you can control, for instance, count as your own platform. So your website, you have full control of what content goes on your website, what keywords you use, and all that stuff. Your blog, the same. Your email newsletter, you decide what content needs to go on there, when it goes out, how, and how often, actually, in a month or 2 months, whatever the case is. So you have full control over that. Then your end media is really just exposure through other people's channels, or channels that we haven't paid for. So press coverage, guest posts on other blogs, or well-known people from your industry. Like, for instance, the people I'm saying I'm going to bring through, they bring their audience, and they're going to bring them to the webinar. We're going to promote the webinar together. That brings their audience to mind. It's also important then that our audience is aligned, because I can't bring someone who talks about fashion to a digital marketing webinar. So alignment is also key. Then you have social shares, which is, I spoke about earlier, which is really making sure your content is good enough that people want to share it with more people. Then you have your paid media, where you use paid advertising to promote your content. Like I said, a lot of people who are just getting started, or even ones who've been in the industry for a while, it's not a cheap exercise. So that's stuff that you can look at. So you paid pay per click advertising, sponsored posts, and paid social media. Again, I mean, it's as little as like $100 where you can, but you do suffer in terms of reach. But that's an option that you have as an individual, as a freelancer, as an influencer, or even as someone who's trying to build a reputation or for yourself within the industry, if you want to kind of move around a bit. Then, in terms of how you show up, this is obviously not the exact detail of what you need to create, but this is some of the content pieces that do well on these platforms. But what I've done is I've highlighted some key things, I think, which people kind of move away from once they start getting into the groove of creating content. And I'm also talking about brands here. So on social media platforms, you need to create visual and social content. But the biggest thing is that you need to remember it's a social media platform. You need to socialize. You need to be creating social content. You can't take those platforms and purely only advertise and always trying to get people to buy all the time. You need to have a social and engagement element to your content. That's what these platforms are for. That's what some of this the audience you have will be on the platforms for. So understand that it's still a social media platform. Then you've got LinkedIn, where it's B2B content. It's also thought leadership. It's great for freelancers, it's great for brands, it's great for individuals who are just working on their professional careers. Thought leadership being a big one, but as soon as you throw thought leadership out there, people start to think complicated, big, jargon. You have to speak in a certain way, you have to create certain type of content. But sometimes literally, and I've done this before, again, where it's just you express your thoughts as you have it, as you would with your, well, maybe not with your friends, not with the friends I have anyway, but in terms of how you talk in a casual conversation. But really what needs to come through there is what your opinion is about a specific topic, a specific industry, just making sure that you are actually expressing yourself and you're letting your knowledge come through on LinkedIn. And I think it really does wonders if you just kind of stick to that and try not to make it feel like it's too heavy for you. And then on Twitter, or X, whatever it's called these days, short form, timely updates. And that one is, again, it's a monster of a platform in terms of time, because on X, if you're not there for a week, and I see this happen to me all the time. If you're not there for a week and you come back and you try to engage again, it takes time for you to gain traction and actually continue. So you need to figure out a way to be more consistent being on the platform. But again, it works depending on what industry you're in and what you're trying to say. And it's really just about figuring it out and making sure it works for you. And then on YouTube, you've got video content. Now they've got long form, short form. Really, you need to find what works for you. But the biggest one, like I said, if you are in the content marketing space and you're trying to find ways to grow, but you don't really want to create too much work for yourselves, the short form content, thanks to TikTok, is content that's prioritized on a lot of these platforms. So on YouTube, if you want to really grow and you want to be able to gain traction and drive the engagement for yourself, YouTube Shorts is perfect for that. On Meta, Reels, because they get served to anyone and everyone. It's not just your followers. That's a big one as well. I saw LinkedIn. Oh, okay. I saw LinkedIn also have a video let's call it an infinite scroll feature now that they're beta testing. So I did get served that way. It works exactly like TikTok, where you just kind of going through vertical videos throughout, and people obviously, as it always happens, they've started resharing other stuff from other platforms onto LinkedIn as well. So that's also there. That's something that is definitely going to start being prioritized as well, because it's new and because it's it's just this massive thing that now everyone is on, thanks to TikTok and I guess Instagram and Facebook stories. And then obviously on TikTok, short form video content, like I said, a lot of brands, even in personal ones, TikTok is a gold mine. And again, it's also around thinking about being the first ones on the platform. There's a lot of brands who'd be like, oh, but our competitors are not there. Yes, your competitors might not be there, but the audience is there. And if you're first one on the platform, your competitors, your customers will notice, because you're the first brand in within that category that shows up on there. So it's these are things that you also need to keep in mind, as well as if you're building a personal brand. This it's also a good platform to start, and it also just gets you into a really good space in terms of creating content. One thing I have learned, and I think it applies to content marketing, is that you need to start creating the content and a lot of it to get better at creating it, right? And then over time, you'll start to see the value of the time that you've put in. Okay, cool. So we've kind of covered some of the approach and what you need to look at and how you need to evaluate creating some of your content and what those content pieces look like. But how do you then kind of make sure, or brands often look at metrics as was the content, was the brand campaign successful? Did we do well? But I often like to look at it in terms of how do you evolve your content? How do you improve? How do you double down what's working well? And how do you change what isn't? And that's where the metrics come in. So I'll first go through, I'm not going to even go through them. Actually, I'll just put them up on screen. The industry terms that we use when it comes to digital campaigns, and which also apply specifically to content marketing. But what I'll do is I'll unpack what these are actually telling you, right? And how you actually need to read them and interpret them. So you obviously have, for your website and blogs, you'll have all these different ones: page views, unique visitors, time on page, and bounce rates, and all those things. You have your engagement metrics, your conversion metrics as well, if you're trying to convert and get leads or get people's contact details or people to actually buy stuff. And then you'll also have the SEO metrics, such as rankings and organic traffic and backlink profiles and all of those things, which we'll go into detail when we go into each of these throughout the webinar series. And then obviously, if you're a brand, if you're trying to sell, if you're trying to move, okay, I don't want to say if you're trying to move products, sounds like I'm selling drugs, but if you're trying to sell product or service, these are some of the metrics that you need to look at. But what are these actually telling you? And how do they help you craft better content in your content marketing strategy, and as you go with your business, your personal brand, or just yourself as an individual, right? If you're looking at the website one, what you want to know is how many people go to my website over a specific period of time, say a month or 2 months or 3 months. But you also understand, am I getting new people to come to the website, or am I getting the same people to keep coming back? There's value in both of those, right? If you're getting new people, that means your content is being discovered by more people. That means it's becoming more relevant to people who are similar to the ones who already visit your website. But if you're getting a large percentage of the people who've been to your website to come back, that means they found value in your website, and they want to come back and see what else you have, or maybe they want to come back and reference the stuff that you already have on your website. So those are also very important, and that's why you also need to understand exactly what those numbers look like, because then do I need to create more new content? Is opportunity for me to reuse the content I have to reshare on different platforms to try and get even more people to visit your website? How long do they stay on the website? Which is, again, this also will be key, because then you will have this in mind if you're trying to see if people are actually enjoying your content. Do they read one thing and leave? Do they come for like 5 seconds and leave? Or once they're on your website, do they then start looking at more of your content to see, oh, let's see what else you have on this website, because they've found the first piece of content that they engaged with very useful as well. It's the same with your TikTok page or your social media platforms. If I see the first video, I watch it and I find value and I enjoy it, what often happens is I'll click on your profile and I'll see what else you've got. And that's also very important, that when I get to your profile, I need to also enjoy the rest of the content pieces that's there, right? And this is where often I find the disconnect between influencer content as well as when they're being commissioned by brands and when they create their own content, where there's a disconnect, right? Either you go with a content piece that they created for a brand, when you go to their profile, there's nothing else like it, or you see their content that they've created organically, you go to their profile and it's filled with random, brand post that they've done that feels nothing like the content piece that brought you to the page in the first place. That also is key, because then that disconnect, that's where people won't stay for long. That's why people won't necessarily subscribe, because they're just like, okay, I found one thing that I like, but I don't like the rest of it, so why would I subscribe and keep getting notifications? So it's key to make sure that you've got all of these numbers and you understand exactly what they need. And then again, is my content valuable enough for my audience to come back for more? That's the ones, returning visitors to your website. Do people think my content is helpful enough that they want to share it? That's where the social share becomes important, and the engagement metrics as well. Are people sharing your content? And you need to have the shareability. You need to be able to check it. Are people sharing my content? Where are they sharing it? And the perfect case for this is if you're creating a blog post or you're creating content for your website and you keep sharing it to Twitter and to TikTok, but when you go to your metrics, the people who read your content and find it valuable actually feel like it would be perfect if they shared it on LinkedIn. That's data you can look at and be like, actually, maybe I'm sharing it to the wrong platform because clearly my audience says this content is perfect for LinkedIn. Then you start to look at that data and be like, okay, let's reevaluate why should I reshare my content. Let's reevaluate with other social platforms I've got. Let me also share that. And if people are starting to save your content a lot more as opposed to sharing it or whatever, and they're just saving it, it's the same on social platforms. If someone saves a content piece because they want to come back and reference it, that's data, that's information that you're getting back that you need to look at. Oh, maybe actually my call to action needs to be save this for when you need it again, and not necessarily, oh, let me know how you feel in the comment section. Maybe that's what your content is for. So these are also data that you need to read and be able to interpret. And then, is it eliciting enough emotion that people want to comment and engage? I feel like people put a lot of value in terms of commenting and engaging and liking posts, but it takes a lot out of someone to actually go in a comment and comment. I don't know how many times I've been on posts where I'm like, I really love this. I want to give this person, a compliment or whatever. And I'm just sitting in the comment section and I'm like, I don't really know how to word this. So it does take a lot of time and energy for people to actually get to that point. So if you're getting people to actively engage with your content and comment and share it and give you feedback, good or bad, that means that you've elicited enough emotion for them to actually want to do that. So that's also valuable information to be looking at. Then are they reading my content from start to finish? If not, why not? So you look at, again, it's important to look, especially with like video, audio content. What are your view-through rates looking like? Are people watching the video until the end? Are they not watching it to the end? Where is when do you lose them? Perhaps in your storytelling, there's a point where you have a kind of a drop and people then just lose interest and they walk away. You need to take those, that data down. And if you do a research, I don't know if I'm going to cover this, but if you do your research in terms of retention within content, it's really important. And what you'll find is that sometimes it's just a split second where you can actually just chop out a second of your video in halfway through, and you've got the person's attention until the end. But because there was that split second where they're like, I'm not feeling this, then they drop off immediately. Remember, there's a million other content pieces out there they could be consuming. So you need to understand, why are they watching until the 15th minute when it's a 20-minute video? Why are they watching until the third second when there's a 6-second video? Understand all of that stuff. If you're trying to get important information across, then you will need to understand, cool, they're only getting to 3 seconds. I'm going to move the important stuff to the first 3 seconds of that content because I want them to sit, because it's also the attention grabbing thing, or it's the call to action. So you need to understand all of this information, what that data tells you. Then are people buying what I'm selling, or are they willing to give me their emails to talk to them one-on-one? I think that's a big one. If someone says, cool, here's my email. If you ever have promotion on what you're selling, let me know. Or if you have more information you want to share with me, I really want to get it in my email. I really want to read it when I have time. I mean, it doesn't happen for all of us, but there are people who are willing to be like, okay, I don't have time to actually read this now, but I'll be willing to read it later, but also understand their time. That just because I gave you my email address to communicate and send my newsletter does not mean you can just do whatever you want with it. It still needs to add value. It still needs to take into consideration that I'm taking time off of my day to actually read your content and consume your content. Then is my content relevant enough that Google wants more people to see it? That's where the SEO stuff comes in. The big question is that, right? When Google serves your content to people, it's because Google thinks your content is relevant. When the person drops 5 seconds into reading your content piece or watching your content, that then tells Google that actually this is not what the person was looking for. And therefore, maybe this person is not the right person to be, to be recommending to our platforms, because what's going to happen is every time I go to Google and every time I search for something, I'm always getting the wrong content. I'll stop. I'll just like, well, let me just Google everything. Well, interesting. Let me just Google everything on TikTok. But these are things that you also need to keep in mind, right? That you need to play the game and give the algorithms what they're looking for. Otherwise, you're not going to win as you try to build your audience and as you try to build traction. And to answer that question, then it will become, am I using the right keywords to make it easy for people to find my content? If your content, if your people are just not finding it, or you're not really getting enough traction, you need to understand, are your keywords incorrect? If, for instance, your content is blowing up on Meta, TikTok X, but not on Instagram or on Facebook, and not on Instagram, not on LinkedIn, it's the same content, and you feel like it's doing well on other platforms. That could also be around how you package it, when you post it on another platform, what kind of attention grabbing tactics are you using on each one, or perhaps you're just not using the right keywords on that specific platforms, and other platforms it's hashtags, whatever the case is. You need to understand again, if you are using the right ones, and then also on Google, I maybe not using the right keywords that people are finding you, and all of that. Keeping in mind that you're competing with other brands on all of these platforms. So if you're using keywords that if I search for it, I get 1 million businesses, chances are if you've just started, yours only going to be at the top of that list. But again, you also still need that because it is relevant to your brand. So it's understanding, having a perfect balance between the popular ones with a lot of competition, the least popular keywords or hashtags with not as much competition, and something in the middle. Because when you will rank higher with the lowest ones, you'll rank somewhere in the middle, but the rankings between the highly or the not as competitive keywords and hashtags and the middle one is the middle, will then kind of drive and help boost you within the rankings, and that's when you actually start to see some results. So these are things that we'll also go into more detail when we do the SEO call, SEO webinar. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then, is the cost of creating this content worth the responses I'm getting? This is a big one. Like I said, you're taking a lot of time to create this content. You're taking a lot of hours in your day and a lot of energy. It's going to be exhausting until you figure out the technical side, until it becomes second nature. What you also need to evaluate, and this isn't to say you want to quit, it's just to kind of streamline how you're creating your content. If you're creating content for 7 different platforms and you're getting let's say it's video content, and you're getting 10 views on each of these platforms, and it's because you're spreading yourself too thin and you feel like, I want to focus on a specific one. Just look at how much time is it taking you to put the content together, how much money is it costing you, versus how much you're getting back if you're trying to sell stuff. If you're trying to build a mailing list, which I'm in the process of trying to do, you also need to understand, if I'm getting 2 emails per week, or 2 people who are going to submit their content, and I'm spending 18 hours that week creating the content, that you need to be able to evaluate. Like I said, it is a long-term gain, but that difference between the amount of work you're putting in and the hours as well as the results should over time start to kind of the difference needs to start shrinking a little bit, and you need to be able to see that growth and actually start to be able to evaluate it. If it doesn't work for you, by all means, do not quit. Like I said, these metrics are not for you to decide if your thing is successful or not only. It's also to see how you can evolve and change how you're creating your content on the different platforms. Then the big one is if you've answered all of these and they're not looking great at all, or maybe you are getting all the engagement, all of the views, all of the comments, but you're trying to sell a product and no one is buying. You're trying to sell a service and no one is paying for it. Are you talking to the right people? And are you saying the right things? You might be talking to the right people, but you're not asking them to take an action. You might be talking, saying all the right stuff, but you're not actually asking them to do something. It's not just about, yes, you can add value, but there needs to be an end goal, right? So that's where then you need to start evaluating if you're talking to the right people. And if the answer is yes, but you're still not getting a desired result, are you saying the right things? If you're not getting any, you're getting engagements, but it's not from the right people, then that becomes a thing. The perfect example of this is that we get influencers who have 1 million followers and have all the engagement in the world, and they want to do influencer campaigns for an audio company, let's say Sony, for instance, but they've never once mentioned they had a passion or they didn't build their audience based on that. And you actually commission them and your campaign would fall flat because that's not, it's not the perfect thing. They're not saying the right thing to their audience. So those are important. That's why I said it's not just for brands, it's not just for people, it's not just for influencers. It's for everyone, freelancer and yourself as an individual. And then in terms of how you can track these, there's different platforms that you can track. I am staying away from the ones that you are going to have to pay money. So I will highlight that Brainwatch and Meltwater do cost a lot of money. And that's why I added the last option, which is manual social media listening. If you are doing all of this stuff, you need a central place where you can read your data. You need a central place where you can see, is my website working? Is my blog working? Are my campaigns doing well? Or if you have organic campaigns on social media, is my content on social media succeeding? And, who's consuming it? When are they consuming it? And those kind of things. There's on-platform insights and data platforms where you can actually read that data, and that stuff is it's so important. I can't even emphasize it enough. And that's even with your Instagram page. If you have an Instagram page, go into the insights tab from time to time and have a look at your engagement metrics, look at your reach metrics. When do you reach the most people? Which day of the week, what time of that day, what type of content is it? The statics, the videos, the memes, the GIFs, whatever. All of that stuff will get you to a central place where you're like, okay, this is the type of content that does well for me. It performs the best on this time of the month or time of day and all of those things. And then you're able to craft a more direct and more formalized, plan on how you want to communicate your content and how you want to share it. Then you also need to be able to listen to what your audience is saying. I mentioned this earlier. A lot of brands just do a lot of the talking and they don't really listen. And that's a big one. So you need to do some manual social media listening where you're looking at sentiment around your brand, sentiment around yourself. You need to take feedback, good and bad, because that can also mean you can evolve your content, you can evolve your personal brand, and you're able to craft better content. You're able to say more meaningful things to your audience, and that's going to be an important one. It will take time out of your day, but it's really, really key in terms of understanding if your content is working or not. So these are just some of those platforms that you can have a look at. They all have free version of some kind, except for the listening tools, the Brainwatch and Meltwater. But a lot of them will also release reports for free. That if you give them your email address, of course, where they'll give you some data that you can use to craft your messaging as well, especially when you're still trying to understand your audience, trying to understand what content works for you and what works for the brand that you're working on. I keep saying brand, and I want to actually touch on that briefly. I understand that some people are not necessarily going to have brands that they need to do this on and practice on. And that's why in the first webinar, I mentioned how important it is to find small brands you can work with, to also look at personal brands such as yourself or someone else if you feel like you don't want to go down that route for yourself, but also being able to really get in the hours and the exercise of being able to build a brand. That's very key. And then in terms of resources, I did also share this in the initial webinar. Just to kickstart your journey, there are some really, really good platforms that you can go to that have I don't even know what the right English is. It is Monday evening after all. But there are some platforms where they aren't just gold mines, but if you go there, you take the time, you subscribe to their newsletters, and you start to actually engage with their content pieces, it will get you a long way in terms of where you want to be. And you can pick one that's specific to you as well. So it's not, it's not everything on the site, it's just some stuff. But the ones I want to start with is some online courses that you can do that are free. Some are paid for, but all of these ones that I've shared here do have some free courses that you can actually do, that you can actually get certified in. And some of these actually carry a weight in terms of you looking for a job or putting them on your LinkedIn or even adding them to your CV. So it's stuff that's really important for you to share on your profiles and say, oh, hey, I've just completed this course and this is the certification that I have. They go a long way. We have an expectation and a requirement within our group of companies that every year we have to refresh our online certifications, because it becomes important when brands pitch to, well, when agencies pitch to brands to actually win their business. They will ask the people who are going to work on my brands, are they certified in all those different things? And it's really, really important. So that's something that you can do for yourself. But also, I mean, the other benefit of this is that you get to consume a lot of information as well, and you actually get to learn a lot more about the industry that we work in. And for those who are in the industry and have been in the industry, one thing I've learned is going back to certifications actually reminds you of the basics. You tend to forget the basics. You start to think in big ideas only, and you forget the basics. And going back to the certifications actually helps you, and it goes a long way. So that's something that also I'd recommend you do. And then blogs and websites, I will share additional ones as well. But these ones for me, I've kind of built my entire career consuming some of this content. I've left HubSpot out because I think if you search online, you will find HubSpot easy. But these are really, really key ones for, social media, SEO. You can look at other case studies of content marketing that's done well. You can look at all these different websites. When I share this, those links will be on there. And I think it's stuff that will really go a long way in terms of teaching yourself some of the what you actually need to understand, just to get an overall understanding of the industry and how you can transition from the position you're in and so forth. And then podcasts, fun one, just to listen to, these are some key ones, but there's obviously a lot more online. There's been some really great South African ones as well. I'm probably going to show those ones on my newsletter just to kind of highlight some local podcasts that are doing well. The only thing I've kind of been struggling with them again is just consistency of content, and also just in terms of maintaining the same level of quality kind of thing. But there are some key ones that a lot of industry and industry leaders go to, every chance they've got. These are the ones that I always kind of tend to and listen to, and it's easier for me to consume this content if I'm traveling or if I'm just taking a walk and I'm going to get an energy drink or something. And then I've also shared these books before. I am working on getting some ebook coupons that we'll share with everyone who attends the webinars, and just to get some percentage off of some of the books. You can get some of them on ebook as ebooks. So I'm going to try and get that. If you want the hard copy, I mean, again, you're more than welcome to do that. I don't know if there's something that we'll ever have where I'm able to provide some discounts as well, but this is something that I'm working towards. So exciting things for the next webinars, I think. And then the key ones for those who missed it in the first webinar, again, it doesn't matter whether it's content marketing, SEO, social media, freelancing, influencers, it does not matter. You need to be able to advance and refine your skills. And that does not mean you pay for a 20,000 course. You just need to be able to, use the resources I've shared and find others online as well, where you are working on your hard skills and your soft skills, just being able to really elevate your thinking, and you working with people and building your power of influence, which I'm really working hard on. And then also just be aware of the latest trends. There's a lot of new platforms that come up that people are slipping on. I'm kicking myself right now for not having been an early adopter of generative AI, but eventually I got into the hype. But I think it would have been amazing to win awards in my industry with my brands, because it's something that I had embraced early on. So those are the things you need to always be on top of. Developing a strong brand digital presence. I've also touched on this briefly, but it's important for you to be visible and be accessible, especially if you're still looking for opportunities, and to be able for you to build your own brand. You need to understand the data. So the slides I just took you through, where I've broken it down, you need to be able to understand the data and the analytics. Don't look at it as numbers, understand what they mean, and really know how to interpret them, and have them influence or affect how you then create your content. And don't be afraid to take risks. I have never in my mind, I can't even tell you how far off doing a webinar series was for me, but it's just because of the conversations that I had been having, and also just some of the, the questions that I've been hearing a lot of people asking. I saw an opportunity and I'm taking a risk. I have no idea where it's going to go, but I'm excited to see. It could work out really well for me, or maybe not. But either way, I would have learned so much from doing this process. So that's the, kind of the risk that I'm taking. I also moved from creative to media and worked out really well, publishing to all of those stuff. So that's also key. And then always seek feedback, which I want to do now. So that's a key one. And then there are some upcoming webinars quickly before I take everyone's comments. I know we're a few minutes over. The next one is going to be social media marketing, and I'll be focusing really on kind of differentiating that from content marketing, which is digital across, and then we'll have social media marketing, which is going to be on the 9th of September. And then the next one will be search engine optimization. But what I'll do is, like I said, I will share these. I'm still working on the full content calendar, so that you have an idea of which ones you need to sign up for and which ones you're not interested in, so that you're only attending the ones that are relevant to you. So that's going to be really, really key. And I'm going to let really what the numbers are telling me and what the people are telling me. I'll let that help me structure my plan as we go. But yeah, that is pretty much that. I will stop sharing my screen. And if you have any comments, questions, or anything, please let me know. And I appreciate the thumbs up and the claps that I've been getting. Yes, I'm sorry I muted you, all of you. It would have been nice to hear a few people cough, just so I know you're actually still online. But we're here now, so we're just gonna have to work with what we've got. Um, Cool. So I'll just take the one question that's in the comment. If you've got any other ones, please just pop them through. Like I said, in the next 10, 15 minutes, I'm just going to chill anyone who wants to have a conversation. If you would like me to unmute you, let me know. I'll unmute and we can quickly have a conversation. Brittany asked, I just want to know, how exactly do we go about doing effective audience research, and how could one effectively juggle their own content as the brand or freelancer along with that of their clients? I mean, that's a tricky one, right? I think with the audience research one, first and foremost, there's a lot of resources that are available, but it's also around understanding what those resources are, what the platforms you can go into look like, and what you can actually get for free. I think GWI is a big one. GWI is really a global platform that a lot of our industry uses. Obviously, it's not necessarily localized, so a lot of it will be general global stats, but those give you a view of how the industry is and where your audiences sit. A lot of the platforms individually themselves actually release a lot of data, because they're trying to get more advertisers on their platform. So if you go to these platforms, you can actually see some really useful information. So I'd recommend that you also have a look at what places like your Facebook. It's not Blueprint, but it's Facebook. If you Google Facebook Inspo, you'll get some stuff on there as well. But the other ones, which, like I said, the resources that I shared with all the websites and some of the blogs will definitely give you some information. desk research is key because a lot of the stuff we have to pay for within the industry, but unfortunately we have to find the free resources that we can use, right? So those are not easy to find if you don't know what you're looking for. But thanks for that question. What I'll do is on the slide where I talk about audience research, before I share the deck tonight on the mail, I will actually include links of all the platforms that you can have a look at. For the most part, you'll have to combine different sources to get to the data that you need. But the big one is getting started, and then you learn from the data that you get and you can take it from there. And some of it is about observing other brands or other personal brands that you can actually learn from, the ones that are doing it well. Again, desk research, manual research is important. The one about juggling your own content, as a brand or a freelancer along with that of your clients, that's a bit of a tricky one. But I think what's important is understanding, because like I said, as in essence, it's two different brands. It's your brand and it's the brands that you're working on. You will have two different goals and you are going to have two different positioning. You need to understand what your positioning is. You need to understand what your brand is. And I'll tell you right now, my experience is it's difficult for people in the industry to be able to separate and do that. A lot of the time, people tend to take their personal opinions of things or how they feel about things or how they think specific platforms are supposed to work, and they want to actually use the same approach for brands, but sometimes it doesn't work like that. I'm a big fan of Twitter. I haven't been able to recommend Twitter for my brands in close to 6 months because it just doesn't make sense for that platform. Again, not necessarily because I don't think my brands wouldn't work on that platform, but because how we do content for that platform, I don't think would work. If we changed the approach and we actually approached it differently, I would say then it works for my brands. It's also just understanding what your brand is and the difference between it and the brands that you're working on. But they will always spill into each other. A lot of the stuff that I share, for those who are still on the call, this is just an insight into some of the stuff that I post on LinkedIn. If you see a long ass post from me, or maybe even a newsletter, it's because I was in a meeting and somebody just annoyed me and said something I didn't agree with, and I needed somewhere to take it out. Or it's because there's something that really, I found insightful in a specific work situation that I'm in, and I wanted to share it. So there is kind of an overlap there, and it will spill over, but you just need to be as careful with your personal brand as you are with the brand that pays you money, in essence. And then Kevin said, okay, Malabo said, if you're lead generating company, how do you tailor content that becomes shareable but generate leads ultimately? Do you have a suggestive scale on how much of lead gen versus valuable content shareable? So one thing I've found, so I come from performance agency, and now I exclusively work on brands that are all about awareness and reach and awareness. If you are looking at, again, like I said, if your content is one targeted at the right audience and you're saying the right things and you have the right call to actions in your content, right, there will be leads that you're going to generate from that. But also you need to be careful, like you were saying, versus valuable content that's shareable. If people are just sharing your content and not necessarily it's not generating any leads for you, then there's a bit of a disconnect there, right? You need to have a perfect balance between the content that's adding value and the content that's converting. I'll give you a perfect example. When we run campaigns, we do quite a few tests where we look at product focused content versus lifestyle content, which shows the product in use by the consumer. What we've found is that the content that has the product and focuses on the product drives people to actually go purchase. The stuff that has lifestyle elements in it is good for engagement. So you need to create these different types of content and monitor each one and know which one drives leads for you, which one drives reach and exposure, right? The shareable stuff might get leads as well because more people are seeing it, but you need to have strong call to actions. People, as I still struggle with this to this day, but people will not take an action unless you ask them to, or unless you tell them what action to take. You need to be very specific in doing that, right? You can literally say, stand a chance to win 50,000 Rand, and you leave it at that. If you don't tell them by doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you struggle to get people to enter those competitions. I mean, 50,000 is a bit of a stretch. I'll probably suck my toe just to win that money. But anyway, the point is you need to tell people what to do and be clear in that. Otherwise, they're not going to take that action. So have a perfect balance between shareable content and content that drives leads for you, because those are two different content types. Happy to get into more detail with that if you have more questions, Malebu. I work for a startup health and wellness company, more of a distributor of health products. My question is, how do I grow the company name on social media effectively, even though the company is mainly a distributor of other products? So, I mean, okay, if you're looking at, let's talk about retail companies, right? So Checkers doesn't necessarily own all the brands that they sell, but it is within their business to make sure that they are actually promoting those products, because then people will buy more of them. Obviously, they'll have specific promotions and they'll have incentive to do that, but it's also around, the products that you don't have incentive to push, because at the end of the day, that brand, if it's a popular brand, maybe you don't have to do as much work because people already are looking for this type of brand. But there will be brands, if your health and wellness products are not well known, it's the brand's job as well as yours as a retailer to be able to push that. Yes, for you as a retailer, it also depends. You have to look at, is the original brand doing enough work to drive awareness? If they're not, that will kind of fall on you. But if they're doing enough job, that means your task then becomes, how do you, because they're kind of doing already the awareness phase for you, right? So you then come in at the consideration and conversion stage. So how do you then convert the people who already like this brand, already engaging with it and tapping into those audiences? And you can actually do that when you model your audiences online, where you can say, okay, cool, this one is targeted at the people who already follow that page and engage with it. But I'm focusing on, we have these products available at 10% off for this month, or here are the benefits if the original brand is not focusing on benefits. So you need to understand what the original brand is doing, and what you then will need to do to drive that conversion. Because for you, at the end of the day, you need to sell, right? But it's the benefit of this and the type of structure of the business you have is the brand equity of the brands you carry. So leverage the ones that have are really well known and loved, and use them to bring the people to your business and to your store, quote unquote, because then they'll also be kind of exposed to the other products. The last point on that is, if you look at Unilever, they've done an amazing job of branding Unilever as a whole, and all the other products then kind of benefit from that. And if you do that for your business, anything you also sell will in turn benefit from you having built a strong brand for your startup, right? It's also about, do you sell quality products? Obviously, that's a decision you guys will make from a product perspective. What is your service like? What is your turnaround times on queries like? What are the reviews looking like? You need to focus a lot on people reviewing not just the products, but your service and how you treat your customers, and how you engage with everyone online. And the biggest one that brands always make a mistake is, don't only highlight the reviews that people are happy. Highlight the bad ones, but what you need to do in that instance is show how well you handled those bad reviews. That also builds. I'd rather deal with a brand that has a few bad reviews, but they're really good at sorting out the issues, than one that seems like it only has positive reviews, but then when I get a problem with them, I struggle to get any help at all. So it's. I know I've said a lot, but it's really just around leveraging the brands you have and the brands that you're selling, and also finding a unique way of telling it, of telling the brand stories. Maybe, I don't know if the brands you sell are restricting in terms of what you can say or can't say about your brands, but that's something to look into as well, is if they're not saying it right, maybe you can find a different, a much more creative copywriter who can help position that product better than they are doing it. So that's something to also look at in terms of the business structure. But that's an interesting one. I'd love to have a chat with about that, Kevin, and just see how I can also assist. Also, I've been worked in the health and wellness space. I'd be very interested in getting some exposure. So let me know. And you can also reach out on my LinkedIn and we can have more conversations there. Cool. Are there any other questions, comments, or does anyone want to ask a question on the side? I'm happy to provide that platform. Otherwise, we can we can conclude today's webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. And thank you for the comments. And I am looking forward to the next one. I think it's going to be a fun one. And again, feel free to reach out on me on different platforms and let me know what you want me to cover. There's already courses that I've added to the calendar based on what people said. Hey, I'm in this space. I want to do 1, 2, and 3. And if it makes sense for me, I will add it. Cool. Thanks, everyone. And I will see you online and I'll see you in the next one. I will share this and additional information by midnight today. I promise. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much. Have a good week further. And sorry, my network froze.